Yo, 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 yo. It's the Good Life Podcast, the kickback. It's your boy, Good Life Russ. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for showing up again. Like I say, every episode, the show wouldn't be a show without you, with the listeners, the viewership, and more importantly, people holding these conversations. I have an exciting episode today on the kickback. We got a new guest. First time ever on the show. First time on the podcast. Miss Marietha. How you doing? It's nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. I've had a very relaxed day, so I'm excited about that.
That's
And
good.
this is my pleasure. We had an interesting phone call, and I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes.
Okay. Well,
Yes,
thank you
ma'am.
for having me. Thank you for having me. You know a lot of my cousins, so yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good thing. But yeah, again, thank you for having me. Hi, viewers. My name is Marietha. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I am a nursing student. I was going for my LPN, but I'm going back for my RN now. And one of the things I like to do is work on genealogy. I've been working on genealogy ever since, my first start was when I was in sixth grade. So
Nice.
that's part of the topic for tonight. Black American genealogy.
Yes, yes. So you said sixth grade?
Sixth grade.
How did
It
that?
start it started as a middle school project. I came home one day, had to have pictures of like my great grandparents, who my grandparents were, and that type of hoopla. So I had
Okay.
to ask my grandmother, like, okay, so who's my great grandma? Who's my great great grandparents? And so she gave me all that information. And that's when she went into talking about our background and our heritage. So that's how I got my start. And I've been going ever since.
So what is, because we're just gonna dive straight into it. So
Let's go.
what's the difference that you've noticed in your life, knowing your ancestry and prior to?
um, the difference in my life, learning my background, especially with my mother's side, because my mother's side, I've learned a lot because of their paper trail that our ancestors left behind.
Nice.
And it's the pride of knowing where
Okay.
I come from and knowing who my ancestors were. Um, my grandmother back in sixth grade told me at one point, she said, "Oh, yeah, we have people who were on Thomas Jefferson's plantation." And she just left it
Oh.
at that. And a lot of times, especially like our grandparents' era, you know how a lot of times they just say certain things and they just cut it off and then they'll
Yeah.
go back to it. Right. So at that point, she just cut that off. And I'm like, okay. But I always remembered it.
Uh-huh.
So years later, when I did some more genealogy research, I actually, at that point, I went back to my fourth great grandmother
Okay.
and hit a brick wall, which in a lot of African American families that happens,
Yeah.
and it's known to happen. But I had a cousin contact me from Canada who ended up
Oh.
giving me some more information. And that's when the brick door opened and I was able to find that paper trail that my grandmother told me about years ago about going back to Thomas Jefferson's plantation. And I was able to go beyond. That's just one branch of my family tree. Just one branch. But from the Monticello um, ancestry, my seventh great grandmother was Mary Hemings Bell, who was the sister to Sally Hemings. And Sally Hemings was the one who had the children with President Thomas Jefferson.
Mm.
So at Monticello, every other year, they have a gathering. It's through the Ascent Getting the Word African American Oral History Project, where they
Hmm.
bring all of those whose descendants were enslaved at Monticello all together for a weekend. They provide all the food, a hotel, things of that nature. And it's just a
Wow.
big gathering, and you're learning about your heritage at the same time. So to answer your
Hmm. That's crazy. I would have had no idea. Go ahead. You're back. Can
It
you
went
hear
out.
me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it went out. A call came through. I had to decline it real quick.
Oh, it's all
So,
good. It's all good.
yeah.
Go
So,
ahead.
just again, just that pride in
Hmm.
knowing your ancestry, where you come from. And even for those who don't know how to even start, you can get the tools and resources on how to start. And I've been through that whole process.
Hmm. I love what you're doing. I love what you're talking about. We're gonna get into the newspaper article you sent me, but I love the interest, on our ancestors. I love that they aren't being forgotten. I love that
Mhm.
these are now things that we want to move forward. We want to hand down to the younger generations, and I think it's important. I talk a lot about growing up with like different family pictures and different
Mhm.
family memories, and I think they're the most intriguing when you weren't there, when you know nothing about it. You got to hear secondhand about the story, and then all the stuff that
Right.
you'll learn, and then you see,
Right.
how we're all connected. I think it's beautiful.
It definitely is. It definitely is. It's just about the learning part of it. Just learning and everything. So it's one of those stories. Like again, so many people don't know where they come from, and it's up to us to learn.
Hmm.
It's 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 really up to us to learn.
I agree.
Yeah,
So can
yeah.
you touch on the newspaper article? Just give some insight about that.
Okay, so as far as the newspaper article, I was interviewed by the Columbus Dispatch in 2021. And how I ended up getting connected with the Columbus Dispatch was because a contact that I have in Kentucky, her name's Caroline Miller. She does a lot of work on genealogy in Kentucky. And her and I have been communicating for a few years because she did a lot of research on my third great grandfather, and his name was Arnold Gragston. And Arnold Gragston, he was an abolitionist in the Underground Railroad, and he would bring slaves from Maysville, Kentucky, Dover, Kentucky, over to Ripley, Ohio. And he would take them up to the Rankin House in Ripley, Ohio, and then go back into slavery himself, and he did that for 4 years. So
Wow.
can right. So can you imagine? Really, you're taking people to freedom. You can't see what these people look like. You're going in the dark of the moon, but yet you're going back into slavery yourself. Like that's it's tenacious. You have to have that love for people, and that's why I said in that article, and I
Yeah.
continue to say that you have to have that love for people, wanting them to have a better life, while you go back and knowing that you feel that this is your duty
Hmm.
to do that. And I never even knew this story because that's on my grandfather's side of the family, and my
Hmm.
grandfather passed away when I was 6 years old.
Okay.
So my mom never knew or anything like that. And how I even found out about him was I was listening to an article in 2012. It was called Slave Narratives. It was an HBO special. And Courtney Vance read the narrative of Arnold Gragston. And I was listening, and it had where he did the interview in Eatonville, Florida. Well, at the time when they were doing the interview, they mentioned Ripley, Ohio. And Ripley, Ohio is my grandmother's hometown. So that
Mm.
pinged the interest to me because
Yeah.
I spent many summers in Ripley, always going down there, things like that. So I'm like, okay, mention Ripley. So I just started listening and everything. And then after it was finished, I said, okay, cool. That was a cool story. So then, about 6 months later or so, I was working on my family tree on my grandfather's side, and I ran across the Arnold Braxton. Again, didn't think of it because the name didn't really register until I started reading the narrative. And I said, wait a minute, heard this story before. And then I went back to the video that was on YouTube, and I said, oh my God. Like literally. And ever since, um, I've just been doing a lot of research about him, and then even connected with family members who are also descendants of his, who are also, we're all related to each other. And I tell you a funny story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny story behind this. So I have my best friend. He's like a brother to me.
Okay.
His cousin as well. We known each other for years. My daughter's 20. We know each other since before she was born. I
Okay.
mean, they came to my daughter's birthday parties, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So, me and my best friend's cousin always used to say, "Well, we're cousins because of my best friend." Blah 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 blah. So, when I found out about Arnold Gragston, I found a Facebook group where it had all the Gragston relatives. I saw my best friend's cousin in there, and I said, "Are you related to Arnold Gragston?" And he said, "Yeah, my second, I think it's his second great grandfather was his son." I said, "Well, my second great grandmother is his daughter." Yeah, they were
Mm.
siblings. So we weren't play cousins after
Wow.
all. We were real
Right.
cousins. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
crazy. Yeah, but I think it's one of those things where when you learn your family history and learn where you come from, you get that sense of pride. And then not even just from that piece, but even the DNA.
Hmm.
DNA is gold because your ancestors gave you that DNA. It
Hmm.
follows you. It follows your children. So I think that's another thing people need to be interested in as well.
I agree. I talk about that all the time. There's stories in the DNA. There's skills in the DNA. There's memories. There's lessons. There's so much. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think it's easy to get overlooked when we're just focused on our life and we don't realize an uncountable number of people have walked through, been in your shoes, thought what you thinking, said what you have to say. They've lived life. And I'd be so intrigued
Exactly.
to find out those stories.
And then the characteristics of people too, based on your DNA. Because I can definitely say, like on my mom's side of the family, all of us have certain characteristics.
Okay.
And it wasn't one of those things where you grew up together or you might not know each other like too well because a lot of times people become distant because of moving away, things like that. But
Mhm.
when we all come together for family reunions and I just look at everybody and I'm like, wow, we all have these particular like-minded characteristics,
Yeah. And we
which
needed that. We needed that because in society in general, they really only go off a relation by looks. You know, if you
mhm,
look alike, if you favor each other. But it's like blood is so much deeper than that.
it definitely is. It definitely is. And that's what in the article I made a reference. I said a comment and it just flowed out. I said, but your bloodline runs through me. Your spirit runs through me
Mhm.
because his spirit is just a continuation. Um, yeah. And then just like on my father's side, on
Mhm.
my grandmother's side of the family, one of is it my it's like my third great grandfather. He actually was a professor in Virginia.
Nice.
And it was at a time where, black people, that certain thing, especially down in the South.
It was
So he
risky.
actually, exactly. And
Hmm.
he had it, and he taught people. And just having that part behind you and just knowing where you come from. But again, that DNA is gold.
Yeah, and I think they would all be proud to hear how you speak of it with pride. You
Oh,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And passion. These are things we need to reanimate in the world. These are things we need to bring back to our lives.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
definitely.
We've buried a lot of these things, but like you said, it's still within us. They just passed it down. It never went anywhere.
Exactly. And my daughter, she took the DNA test before she moved to Florida in 2020.
Okay.
And my mom has also taken the DNA test as well. My grandmother's going to be taking it in a couple of weeks also.
Nice.
But like even with my daughter's family, I traced her roots to Ohio in the beginning of 1800s. Ohio became a state in 1803.
Right.
So like her people, I traced them to like 1810 Ohio. And a lot of times, people who were enslaved, they were given land in Ohio from Virginia and things like
Mm.
that. So it's so much there. It's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
Yeah, and I think as we, start to understand ourselves more, we understand this information's for the family, especially if you have kids
Hmm.
and you can't understand why your kid is behaving a certain way or talking a certain way. That
Hmm.
stuff gets passed down.
Yes, it does. It does indeed. It does indeed. Definitely. Even how people are built, things like that. But most importantly, the mental
Yeah.
and everything. And there's so many things you can find out with DNA.
Hmm.
And for those who are adopted, I know that this may be a struggle for those people who are adopted. I recommend everybody take the Ancestry.com test, 23andMe, MyHeritage, whichever one that they want to take. Generally, Ancestry is the larger database, but 23andMe, in my opinion, has the better part as far as your ethnic background.
Hmm.
And get a start there. There's so many tools and resources out here. I'm actually working on a project now with a young lady who goes to a major university. And this particular university, she's doing a dissertation for them. And I'm actually about to help her with that, go through those particular channels with the dissertation for the Underground Railroad and African American history. I've helped tons of people find grandchildren, siblings, parents, all from DNA.
That is amazing. I want to go ahead and give you your flowers for that. That's amazing.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. And here's the thing, I've had so many people on the other side who don't want to know anything about it, who could care less, who aren't interested. And then I even had people tell me, oh, you doing all this, people will laugh at you and things like that.
Hmm.
And even try to discourage me from even taking the test. Some people who don't even want to take the test. And that's fine if you don't want to do that. If you don't want to know about your history, that's fine and dandy. But don't say to somebody, oh, people are going to laugh, this, because you don't
Right.
want to know. But that I just kept pushing, kept going.
Right.
And this is where I'm at now. And it's a passion.
And I can hear the passion. I can feel the passion.
Oh,
This is the second time we talked about it. I feel like I've been looking with you. I feel like I'm back on the plantation, smuggling people off. You know what I mean? Like this, and that's what we need. Because even a lot of us grew up with bedtime stories. We grew up with fairy tales and fantasies. What? Imagine if those stories were real.
exactly. And the thing about it, this is the stuff they do not teach in school.
Yes.
Right. I mean, we have to know our history for ourselves. I mean, a lot of other people can trace their things back to Spain, back to Europe, back past the Mayflower. But for us, as far as African Americans, it is hard.
Hmm.
But North Carolina has good records. They have very excellent records. But there's a lot of different resources you can use. Even the Underground Railroad Museum in Cincinnati,
Hmm.
people could take a trip down there, but they have free access to the Ancestry website and that they can use. Then there's another website. I can't think of the name off it right now, but there's GEDmatch. This is after you take your do your DNA test. There's the ones through the Mormons. I can't think of the website right now, but that's free. And people, if they know certain names, they can trace it back. And then
Yeah.
sometimes you have to go into the wills. I went on trips, like I went to courthouses just to try to find different records. And I got paperwork. So it's like, yeah, taking other people with me. My cousin and I just went on a trip like 2 weeks ago. We went to Cincinnati and then we went on the other side to Kentucky. My mom's side of the family, every year we have family reunions. And between my grandfather's side and my grandmother's side, the most we had was like 600 people at one reunion. But we always do a family history moment. So that
Nice.
way everybody knows where they come from.
That's beautiful, and
Thank
it's
you.
beautiful to me how the universe works because I'm finding a lot of information about people placed around the country who are doing the same work you're doing. I just learned in the last couple of years um, that there's a port in South Carolina that a lot of the slaves were coming through, so a lot of them still
Mhm.
have records.
Oh yes, oh yes, definitely. They got the ports. The main ports, I believe, was in Virginia, Maryland, and South Carolina.
Hmm.
Those were the main ports, and yeah, they have tons of records.
So what is safe to assume for me if there's someone out there getting discouraged finding their DNA, they're getting discouraged finding their journey, hit up these records, hit up these cities, look for these places. Is that a good place to start?
Um, It
Or would
depends
you
on
say the
where they're
DNA
at.
test?
It depends on where they're at in their journey.
Okay.
My first recommendation would be take the ancestry.com test
Okay.
or 23andMe or MyHeritage, whichever one. Um, I personally recommend Ancestry and 23andMe just because it has more in their databases. If you start there, you can, one, maybe have a high relative which will match up to you very high, in which you can look at their trees and even ask them who they are, especially in adoptee cases, and try to get information that way. Or B, you can start through some of the other websites like Ancestry, going online, getting a free trial, or going to Cincinnati and going to the museum to where you can look it up for free. And if you know names and no locations where they were, a lot of times you can go far. Um, then again, there, especially with us in African American community, a lot of times we can't even go back to our third great grandparents. That's when you're going to have to go into the wills. You have
Yeah.
to know the name of the slave owners, things like that. Um, Sometimes you can even find free paperwork. I mean,
Mm.
it's just so much, but you can't be afraid to go visit these places.
Yes.
You
Yes.
can't.
And I can see this now too as a healthy opportunity to reach out to grandparents, great aunts,
Hmm.
uncles. You know what I mean? They know something. They've heard something, or they have some paperwork that you can look through.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think the what you've been driving home for me as we've been talking is it's gonna take some work.
Yes, 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 definitely, definitely. And yeah, again, because I started when I was in sixth grade. I stopped for a while, of course, because I mean, became a teenager, life had
It unlocks other people's truth and
to.
other people's identity. You know what I
It
mean?
does.
And someone
Uh,
said in the comments, plantations are still accessible to the public.
yeah, they are. They are. Just like how I went to Monticello. I mean, it's a plantation. There's some plantations in North South Carolina that, yeah, a lot of them are accessible to the public.
Okay. I didn't even know that because I mean, you think too, as black people, is my first thought of going to a plantation is kind of eerie, kind of spooky.
Right.
But I think the more we think on it, the more we dwell on it. We're having this conversation. This is a good thing for us,
Hmm.
a very good thing for us. I think it'll help us kind of end some of the generational trauma. I think it'll help end some of the family curses that we keep passing down and give us more of a sense of pride when it comes to family. Because us as African Americans need to reestablish what family is, what we consider
Yes.
family. And I think the whole world is watching us to see what we do next because we don't really
Yes.
have tradition. We're
Right.
creating that right now, so as important as it is to create it moving forward, you got to know where you came from. We can't leave them out because they had to do what they did for us to be on this show right now.
Exactly. Exactly. You never forget where you come from. And because of them, always remember where you're going to. And that's why I take so much pride in the things that I do out here in this world, as far as like, being a nursing student right now, even with that piece of it, because come to find out, my third great grandfather, one of my aunts, his daughter, or basically, she was a nurse and she went to St. Augustine University, which is, well, it's now St. Augustine, but at the time it was St. Agnes. And she died of tuberculosis at 32, but she
Mm.
was a nurse and her father was a slave, which Arnold Graston was her father. So imagine your parent was a slave and here you are part of the black middle class, just one generation away. And then you risked your life helping others. And I've always wanted to be a nurse. And one of my cousins told me, he was like, well, look at that. And we just found that piece out maybe 4 months ago.
Nice. Wow.
Right. So it's there, it's in you. But I recommend for those, especially adoptees, start at Ancestry and then go from there. And then for those who aren't adopted who want to find out more, yeah. And then I'm also available. I am going to um, offer my services to people, for those who really want to. dig into this. I'm actually going to start school as well to become a certified genealogist. So that's a
Congratulations.
next step. Next step. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
university thing got me helping her with that dissertation. Like, okay, you know what? And I visited this before, but then I said, maybe not. And I have a cousin who actually did it also. So that's
Okay.
going to be another step too. So add that piece to the resume.
Yes, they're saying congratulations in the comments. Congratulations.
Thank you,
But they'll
everybody.
be
Thank
blessed to
you.
have you. 100%.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
And I want to focus on African American genealogy. I
Okay.
mean, because that's us. We're the
Yeah.
ones who have the hardest time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I have a question. I'm gonna put myself in an adoptee shoes. I got a few adoptive friends. I've seen
Okay.
situations on television. So let's break some reality ground. So let's say
Okay.
we do our ancestry, and this is just what you would advise. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but what you would advise. So
Mhm.
we do our ancestry, we find some family members. Would you advise reaching out to them, and how would you go about that? Someone you've
If
never
you
met.
if you've done the ancestry test, and if you have a high what they call centimorgan match, which
Okay.
they initially as CM, high match is usually basically either parent, grandparent, first, second cousins, and those ranges match from like 3,000 and something centimorgans for a high match to like 102 centimorgans. So from 102 to 3,000, those are
Okay.
your high matches. And I just recommend, if you have a match like that, reach out, say, hi, how are you? My name is such and such. I noticed that you are a high um, DNA match to me.
Okay.
Do you mind telling me where you're from or where your family is from? And then go from there. See if they have a tree. Because sometimes if they have a tree and their tree is public, you can look and it doesn't have living relatives listed. It will have those who are deceased because,
Okay.
of course, they got to protect privacy.
Right.
But I would start at that point. See if they respond because some people respond, other people don't. And I've actually worked on cases like that before for people. I
Wow.
have a young man now who's trying to find who his biological father is. And that is one case that I haven't been having the hardest time with, but I'm still going at
Yeah.
it. But yeah, that's why I recommend. And then see if they respond. If they respond, perfect. If not, move on to the next person. Somebody's going to respond somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, but look at those trees. And then another thing you can look at, even if you go to like fourth cousins and go back to like the first cousin match, if they have a tree, see a common name. What's a
Mm.
common last name?
Okay.
And then you can just narrow it down and narrow it down. And with genealogy, that's why I want to become certified because I've been doing it for this length of time.
Mm-hmm.
A certified genealogist can trace those. They're like, okay, so this person's here, this person's here. Okay, this is common name, this common name, and then they can just connect the dots. So
That's
that's what I would recommend.
amazing. And this has just been going around behind our backs, underneath our noses the whole time.
Oh
And this
yeah,
is something we need.
yes,
I don't
definitely.
think this is like a hobby. I don't think this is for fun. I think this is something people need. It'll give you closure. It'll give you
Hmm.
encouragement. And again, that sense of pride, being proud about family. I think that's our first step into redefining a family. We need a family we're proud of, and that's not
Right,
always Nobel Prize winners or presidents. You
right,
know what I mean? Sometimes that was the grandmother who fed the neighborhood. That was the uncle who worked on everyone's car. That was the grandfather who
exactly,
drove the school bus and made sure the kids get to school. Like, we have to start learning to be proud of things that we're doing that we learn from
exactly.
them.
Exactly. But the first thing is you got to want to start to learn because
Yes.
some people don't want to even start. Some people don't even care. And to be honest, people do what they do, but it's disappointing because why don't you want to know where you come from? Why
Yeah.
do you only want to, or why do you only want to know this much? Why don't you want to know the whole scope? Like, why not? It's you.
Mm-hmm.
You're passing this to your children. Why not know? Some people are scared to know. That's okay. But why be scared? It's your DNA. It's your
Yeah.
background. I mean, it's who you. I mean, it's not necessarily who you are because we make ourselves and things like that. We form things, but ultimately, it's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't. I mean, hey, you gotta jump off that porch sometime, right?
I agree, and I think it's important because it's so much bigger than us. You know, you may have a kid
Exactly.
that wants to know. You may have a sibling that wants to know. So if we unlock it, we unlocking it for everybody.
Exactly, exactly. And some people want one person to do all the work while they reap all the benefits and
Yeah,
things like that. And yeah, because we all have cousins, and just because my sister's DNA, I don't have any siblings, but just because your sister's DNA and your DNA, they might be two different DNAs too, because of how ancestry works, because of the algorithms. You can match up with certain DNA relatives that I may not match up with, and vice versa.
mm,
So that's where the importance of other family members taking the test comes into.
okay.
Yeah.
And I really do think this is something, you know, we're coming around more too. I want to say it's that fear that keeps us away, but like you said, it's all of this will set you free, you know, and it was hidden from us for a reason. They didn't want
Hmm.
us to know these things for a reason because who our ancestors were.
Right.
They were
Exactly.
powerful.
Very, very powerful. Um, Kings and queens. That's how I look at it. Kings and queens. And even within my own path, um, when I took the test in 2017, it was to find out, of course, my DNA background versus oral history. But I was trying to solve a DNA mystery in my own family.
Okay.
So, on my mother's side of the family, my great grandmother, all of our lives, we thought that a particular man was her father. And come to find out, he wasn't. It was another man. And it wasn't one of those situations where, oh, mama's baby, daddy's maybe. It was certain things that weren't talked about, like how my second great grandmother had my great grandmother by somebody else, but then married the man who we thought was her father a
Mm,
year after she was born. And in the census records in 1910, it had her last name listed, her biological last name, but then it had her as his stepdaughter. So that confirmed it right there. But then by 1920, the census, it had her by his last name, her stepfather's last name. And a lot of times back then, they did that.
yeah.
So even on her death certificate, it had her maiden name as this name, to where that's not her maiden name at all.
Is that considered commonwealth back then, or were they just messing up?
Um, no, a lot of times when a woman had a child or was married, and then the husband died and or the kid was little and they got remarried, that kid was quote unquote adopted by that husband and ended up
Mm,
taking that name. But and then a lot of records they didn't even have. So this you're talking like 1910, 1920.
right.
So they just let them take these names.
Yeah.
They just it's not like how it is
Less
now where
paperwork.
right. And I couldn't even find her birth certificate or anything to
Wow.
even match that. But even on, like I said, even her death certificate, it has him listed as her father and his name being her maiden name, and that's not the case. But the crazy thing about it is like in my grandmother's hometown, we have a few families. A lot of families are related to each other. One family tried to say we weren't related to them by blood. And we're like, well, we always come to the reunions, blah, 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 blah. Well, long story short, my mother and I are related to this family by blood. I mean, and they
Mm,
were cool, but you know how you got that one or two in the bunch who, you ain't related to me type of thing, right?
yeah. Going against the grain. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, DNA determined that we are, and the main lady who wanted to say we weren't related, me and her popped up as a DNA match. So I kindly emailed her, hello,
Hey, Auntie,
damn,
check this out.
right. Exactly.
You ain't want me, huh?
Exactly.
I'm here.
Right. Exactly. And you see it's in the DNA.
It's out of my hands. I'm sorry.
Right. but but with the family learning that particular line and stuff, and not just with that particular family that we've always been cool with and who we're actually family, but even other branches off of the family. And then I ended up finding out who my second great grandfather's name was. I was
Mm,
able to trace it,
okay.
his parents, and all of that. So I went back on that tree too. So yeah, but that was
Got
my
you a
personal
time
DNA journey.
machine real quick.
Right.
And
That was
this
my
is
personal journey.
I love that you know what you've shared, because this also goes hand in hand with lessons we're learning today as Black people. You got to
Hmm.
stop letting other people tell you where you from or who you are. Do your research. Do your own
Exactly.
research. Don't just allow someone to tell you where you from and you go along with it. Like, no,
Exactly.
actually, because they'll tell you anything.
Exactly. You're right. Definitely.
So I've
And just.
been, you know, I've been learning in my own way, you know, what
Hmm.
family is. I know we have our birth family, and then we have the family we create,
Right.
and I think both of them are just as important. I think too
Oh
many
yeah.
times we want this or that, and we just need everything. We need the whole.
Yeah. We do. We definitely do. And just as next generations. And overall, overall, we do. I've been just blessed by not just my experience, but helping others. Like, I found a girl.
Mhm.
She was 10. She took the test. I was trying to figure out why she matched me so high. Well, come to find out, she was adopted, and
Mhm.
her adopted parents had their adopted kids take the test, and they lived out of state. And I was able to link her up to where how we fall in our family tree. And a couple years ago, she met her grandmother, her biological grandmother, which
Mm.
is like my second cousin,
Wow.
from DNA.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
See
So,
those are that's what I would consider a miracle. You know, those are the
hmm,
things we need to see in the world, because it makes us keep poking. It makes us keep looking. We never get
exactly,
content. We're like, what else don't I know?
exactly, exactly. And then even with my daughter's family,
Uh-huh.
a lady matched up to her. And I was like, "Well, who are you?" Like, because I know a lot of her, I know a lot of her family members, and I'm like, "Well, who are you?" Come to find out, it was my daughter's great grandmother's half sister who she
Mm.
matched up with, and her great grandmother was adopted. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That is amazing.
yeah.
Building new bonds,
Hmm.
shaping new futures. Yeah, this
Exactly,
is life work. This is the work that keeps on giving.
exactly. I mean, there's stories that touch your heart, and then there's other stories that break your heart too. Because
Mhm.
even with my grandfather Arnold Gregson, even some others, the um, slave registries that they have, seeing your people marked with just a
Yeah.
tick, or even in wills listed with the cattle and the tools, and one slave named John,
Mm.
like that stuff breaks your heart. But it gives you that strength too, because
Yeah.
you're like, my grandfather or whoever was listed in this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And John was a human being.
exactly,
He deserves
exactly.
everything we deserve. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to being remembered and that
Yeah.
recognition. A big movie I that opened my eyes was Coco. I don't know if you've seen it, but the animated movie
Mm-mm.
for kids. Yeah, and it's literally, you know, it's about their ancestry, and when people move on, they stay
Mm-hmm.
alive because they're the memory of them. And when people stop
Mm-hmm.
remembering them, they fade away. So it's this big, they're
Mm-hmm.
teaching the young people, you can't forget about the old people. Even if their way is not the way no more, they paved the way for you to make the way. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
they got the ball rolling before you even existed, and that'll bring us closer to ourselves. I think this day and age we're so disconnected from ourselves because we don't know how it began.
Right. Exactly. And I have this motto where I say, keep their name going.
Yeah.
Keep their name going. So I say like Mary, Arnold, Valentine, Mariah, all of them. I keep their names going. That's just a couple of them. Just keep the names going because they're no longer here. They will fade away. But you
Mm-hmm.
gotta keep saying their names.
Mm-hmm.
You got to. So, but that's just my 2 cents on it. With the genealogy and Black America and everything. But yeah, I think everybody
Yeah.
needs to
I
do.
I know for a fact some gonna watch this and go look up the, and even if it's one person, that was worth it because
Mhm.
I'm telling you, this is the stuff that's gonna stay with you. This is the stuff. Hey, you may meet some connections down the road and
Oh
realize
yeah.
y'all related, or you may help them find their ancestors.
And the free site that I was trying to remember is Family Search, familysearch.org.
Okay.
That's a